Hey Flock, Mike here from Epic Duck Studios, and welcome to the assembly guide for Bo-katan from the Star Wars Shatterpoint starter set. The core set comes with 2 full sprues of characters. Bo-katan is on the same sprue as Anakin and Rex. If you find that any parts are missing from your sprue, check inside the plastic bag that the sprues came in. I had 1 or 2 small parts that popped off and were just loose in the bottom of the bag, but everything was accounted for. So this is where you'll find Bo-katan on the frame, right beside Anakin. All the parts begin with E. I do strongly recommend you pull up the official assembly guide for these models and simply use this as an extra resource. There's a few things that can make assembly just a little bit easier, and I'm hoping to point those out to you. For this build, I'll be using Mr. Hobby Mr. Cement S plastic cement. This is effectively the same product as Tamiya Extra Thin, except that I have a local store that carries it. Now, Bo-katan's model is made up of a decent number of pieces, but it should be noted there is an optional head in there. You can either have her bare head without a helmet, or her helmeted head. The helmet is 2 pieces, so you have a little bit of assembly to do, whereas the face just means you're painting 1 extra tiny face. You get to choose whether you want to do extra assembly or extra painting. Personally, I've gone with the helmeted head here. This is the way. There is a very tiny pistol in a very tiny holster that goes on one of Bo-katan's thighs. Make sure you don't miss this piece. Once everything has been clipped from the sprue, it's time for a little bit of cleanup. You'll want to remove any obvious mold lines and then the tiny little bumps where we've clipped the pieces off of the sprue. To assemble small pieces like Bo-katan's torso or helmet, where I don't want to run the risk of getting plastic glue all over my fingers and leaving a big fingerprint on a piece, I stick 1/2 to a little bit of poster tack that's on a bottle cap. This basically gives me a hands-free way to hold onto a piece, and then I can pull it off that pretty quickly and just kind of squish everything together, make sure it's well seated. Instead of cleaning every single piece and front loading all that work, I'm cleaning and building as I go. So now I'm using my poster tack trick again to put Bo's helmet together. This is the back of the helmet, and then pop, there goes the front. There's a little bit of a mold line running down the front of Bo-katan's leg here. Honestly, the biggest mold lines on this whole piece though come from the jet exhaust from her jetpack. Almost every other mold line is so minimal that if you're just doing nice tabletop paint jobs, you probably don't even need to clean them at all. Bo-katan's legs slot into the bottom of her torso. I'm applying glue here to the little key that's at the top of the thigh, and then that'll slide into the bottom of the hip, which is part of the torso piece. When I'm putting 2 keyed pieces together, I really like to give them a little bit of a wiggle. This just helps seat the key properly and make sure that the plastic cement does its job. Here I'm applying a little bit of plastic cement to the key on the second leg, sliding that into place, giving it a little bit of a wiggle and a little push, and there we go. Now on Bo-katan's left thigh, you can see where the holster goes I was mentioning earlier. A little bit of plastic cement in the slot, and that holster holds really nicely. So the smoke plumes coming off of Bo-katan's jetpack have the most significant mold lines and probably the most significant gates of this entire kit. They're fairly easy to clean though because they have a really nice kind of fluid flowing shape. There's not a lot of deep recesses that your knife can't get to easily. So you can just scrape along the side and you'll get most of that mold line quite easily. There's 2 separate smoke plumes though, one coming from both nozzles of the jetpack, so you will have to do this twice. Before you put any plastic cement on these smoke plumes, please dry fit them. Make sure you know where they're going, how they're joining together. Once you've figured out how the 2 parts go together, apply a little bit of plastic cement to both sides of the joint. Often I'll only put it on one side, but with a larger piece like this, you want to make sure both sides are tacky and ready to go together. Now the smoke plume attaches to Bo-katan in 2 places. There's a little divot here where her foot goes, and then this part here attaches to her back. Start by lining the back up, pressing that together, and then pivoting the foot into place. Okay, Bo-katan's headless, armless, flying torso is ready to go. Let's start adding some more limbs to that. I'm going to glue the left arm on, a little bit of cement in the left shoulder, and a little push fit, and that arm is set. Now unfortunately, after I attached the arm, I realized there was a mold line running basically the length of it, so I'm very lightly scraping that down, and you'll see I'm scraping towards her torso. Now part of Bo-katan's right arm is actually part of the torso, so we're actually just gluing on her forearm here. It pops on pretty nicely, it's very well engineered. Next it's time to attach your head of choice. Pop a little bit of plastic cement into that neck joint, slide the head in, give it a little push, a little wiggle, and there you go. So the last thing to do is just get the smoke plume attached to a base. One thing I found was that mine didn't sit perfectly flush. You can see after I push it on here, the right side is lifted up just a little bit. The bottom's not perfectly flat. And I was able to fix that by just sliding some extra thin plastic cement underneath the smoke plume And just really pushing down on both sides, giving it a really good firm push, holding that there for about 15 seconds, maybe 20 seconds. And that bent the plastic enough to take that little bit of unevenness, that little bit of non-contact area out of the equation. And here we go, that's a much better join with the base. It looks more contiguous, much more flat, and Bo-katan is ready for priming and painting. Thanks for watching, and until next time, do something epic.